the station where I worked then, we were the very last people to go off the air. You remember it not as a story, but as being fortunate enough to be part of this person's life.
Terry Casey joins the First Coast News team Monday, March 22nd on 17 First Coast News.
The First Coast is watching 17 JKS.
10 seconds. Stand by.
Live from Channel 17. This is First Coast News.
Good evening. Terry Casey joins our 17 First Coast News team tonight.
Got to tell you, went to the University of Florida for a time many years ago, and it's wonderful to be here when all this is happening, because for the first time in some 60 years, there are plans now to play a Florida-Georgia football game away from Jacksonville.
That's right. Ken's here with details. Ken, not the news we wanted to hear, but it could have been worse.
Good and bad news, mostly good. We've indeed lost one game, but we're going to have to play the rest of them here till 2002. It could be worse. Georgia Athletic Director Vince Dooley says that it was the 60-year tradition of the Florida-Georgia game in Jacksonville, along with the concern for the South Georgia fans, that tipped the scales in favor of keeping the game right here.
We may be talking about a football game, but the Bulldogs are playing hardball. First, the 1995 game will be played in Athens, which solves the problem of Georgia having only 5 home games that year. Next, all games through 2002 will be played at the Gator Bowl, but only if the proposed $49 million renovation is done before the 1996 game. Also, after the 96 game, Gator Bowl seating arrangements would put Georgia fans on one side of the stadium and Florida fans on the other to reduce friction. Georgia would also get more money for playing in the game, in part because it costs the Bulldogs more to come to Jacksonville than it does the Gators. If these and other concerns aren't met, the two universities could terminate the contract. It's important to note that Georgia has secured Florida's approval on all of this.
Even with all of that, Dooley says that he knows the decision will disappoint a lot of Bulldog fans who have been pushing for a home and away series with the Gators. Now, what this means here in Jacksonville is that the city must go ahead with the planned $49 million renovation of the Gator Bowl. So far, the city seems to be pleased with the way things have gone today.
I'm absolutely claiming victory. 9 out of 10. It's not as good as 10 out of 10, but 9 out of 10 in the next 10 years is satisfactory, more than satisfactory. It is a win as far as we're concerned. We will build a stadium. We will go forward.
So far, the University of Florida is the one that comes out the Good Samaritan. The 1995 game was supposed to be a home game for the Gators. They've said, we'll take the game to Athens if it means keeping it here in Jacksonville.
As the mayor said, 9 out of 10 ain't bad.
Right.
Means $30 million a year to our economy.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Well, on a note of perhaps more, well, a little sadder note, crime note that has been followed for some time, the teenager that Sheriff Jim McMillan is suspecting of shooting Deborah Lewis on I-295, that teen has agreed to take a lie detector test.
And at the same time, prosecutors have agreed to drop armed robbery charges against 17-year-old Chad Edwards.
And as Richard Rose shows us in this exclusive First Coast News report, Edwards hopes to prove his innocence.
One of these days, you'll know what we know about this thing, and you'll see that we haven't overreacted.
Ever since targeting Chad Edwards 4 months ago as the leader of a West Side gang responsible for shooting Deborah Lewis, Sheriff McMillan has stuck to his conviction that Edwards is a prime suspect because the teen bragged to a jail informant that he shot Deborah Lewis. But prosecutors found the teen had the details of that shooting wrong and dropped the charges. In fact, 5 charges brought by the sheriff have now been dropped, including the charge he robbed this Skinner's drive-through dairy. A trial was to begin today. But when prosecutors saw our interview with the clerk who was robbed, they decided to drop the case because clerk June Bowles told us it was a white man, not a black, who robbed her. What angers the family about the idea of Chad Edwards as the driver of the armed robbery car is that the information didn't match up with what the police department had in its own reports, and that detectives never came out and asked the clerk if Chad Edwards was the driver before they charged him with the crime.
There's the feeling that the sheriff's office was pushing this case because of my client's alleged involvement in I-295 shootings.
Chad Edwards' attorney hints the family may bring a civil lawsuit against the sheriff for malicious prosecution, especially if Chad Edwards passes a lie detector test on the Lewis shooting. The teen's attorney says just the fact that armed robbery charges have now been dropped in exchange for taking the polygraph shows what police are really trying to prove.
The case that they are concerned with, the I-295 case, the state attorney's office refused to file it. And I think Sheriff McMillan's comments speak for themselves.
With photographer A.J. Sherrills, I'm Richard Rose, 17 First Coast News.
Now, if Chad Edwards fails that lie detector test, prosecutors tell us they can't bring charges because lie detectors are not admissible in court. Now, he will also be under court supervision concerning charges that he was involved in another case, even though he denies guilt. And if he meets the terms of the agreement, he will not have a criminal record.
An Arlington man's alleged sexual escapades have landed him in jail on attempted murder charges. 21-year-old Sean Christopher Boswell was arrested today after a woman says he had sex with her several times since last October, knowing that he is HIV positive. The state attorney's office says Boswell attempted to kill the woman by having sex with her while infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. The victim was tipped off, by the way, by another of Boswell's sexual partners that Boswell is HIV positive. So she herself was tested and is HIV positive as well. Boswell is being held in Duval County Jail under a $50,000 bond. A pro-life activist almost got arrested at the Capitol today.
He got into a couple of arguments with two lawmakers over the abortion clinic protection bill.
Our Mike Basilinda shows us the latest chapter in the standoff that won't go away.
The clinic protection bill's main sponsor has been accompanied by police for several days, even though there have been no threats to her safety. But as Elaine Gordon walked the Capitol halls, she was confronted by Operation Rescue activists who were in the building working against her bill.
Are you trying to restrict homosexual free speech or nuclear rights free speech?
My dear, I am a feminist.
No, ma'am, you're not a feminist.
Excuse
because
me.
What about the unborn women?
Mr. Tucci.
What about unborn women?
Tucci, are you going to let me finish a sentence?
The arguing lasted almost 10 minutes, during which Gordon found it hard to get a word in edgewise. Then she gave up.
I'd like to speak to you about House Bill 17.
Operation Rescue's next stop was the office of Sarasota Senator Jim Bozar. He's the Senate sponsor of the clinic legislation, and from behind closed doors, shouting was heard and security was called.
Yes, we have some pro-life people here that will not leave the office. Thank you. Yes.
Why are you afraid to hear disagreement to your bill?
Excuse me. Because you are rude.
Why are you not open to free speech?
You are rude people.
Who was doing the swearing at who, sir?
No one was swearing anybody.
What was your quote? What did you call Reverend Tucci?
Reverend Tucci is a horse's ass. Goodbye. Would you mind waiting here to be arrested?
If you want me to be arrested, is that a request?
Ingress and egress.
Just don't go anywhere. Okay? Would you wait here?
Or you're going to commit a felony.
I'm going to make a complaint against you.
Okay. I'd be glad to stay here.
Good.
Minutes later, Capitol Police did arrive, but no complaint was filed and no arrests were made. In Tallahassee, Mike Basilinda, 17 First Coast News.
The bill causing the uproar defines what is and what is not legal outside abortion clinics. The House has already passed the bill. Senate committees are still looking into it.
Jacksonville is saying goodbye tonight to a businessman who just never gave up and who also saw a risk as simply an opportunity. James E. Davis was buried this afternoon at Oak Lawn Cemetery on the south side. Davis, as you well know, was one of four brothers who co-founded the Winn-Dixie grocery store chain, largest in the southeast. He was instrumental in the success of other ventures as well, including American Heritage Life Insurance Company. James Davis died at his home in Jacksonville yesterday morning. He'd been ill for a long time. And instead of flowers, his family asks donations be made to the Institution for World Capitalism at Jacksonville University or to Mayo Clinic, Jacksonville. J.E. Davis cared for the people of the First Coast, and that certainly did not end with his death.
His legacy lives on through all of us. Did so much.
Well, what are we going to be checking right now?
Well, how about another news coming up? We'll meet the disabled railroad worker whose life is about to change thanks to that lottery ticket he bought right here in Jacksonville.
And a little later on, I'll introduce you to some folks I met from Palatka, Russia.
And we'll talk about some showers spritzing on the First Coast. How long are they going to last? Stay with us.
Every week, World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, there's a segment called Your Money, Your Choice, a series that spotlights wasteful government spending and unnecessary pork barrel projects. Well, tonight's subject will look just a little bit familiar to you. It is the downtown people mover. Local and national critics will portray the JTA project as a $70 million program that serves only 1,200 people. Supporters, of course, have a far different perspective. Your Money, Your Choice on the Skyway follows 17 First Coast News Tonight.
You know, another big-ticket item, the space shuttle, went absolutely nowhere today. Columbia was supposed to have begun a German research mission this morning when computers automatically aborted the launch with just 3 seconds to go. The engines had already started firing, but the computers sensed a fuel line problem. Now, you can see here main engine number 3. It's the one on the right. It fires, and then it slowly stops there. Well, the astronauts, thankfully, were never in any danger, and NASA is just going to have to wait 3 weeks now to repair the faulty valve before trying to launch again. And I guess weather didn't have anything to do with it at all.
Was not a factor.
Weather wasn't a factor. You just wonder if they couldn't have just popped the clutch on that thing and got it going.
I don't think so, Bradley.
No, it doesn't work that way. No, weather was not a concern. They had, went all the way up to 3 seconds before.
Yeah.
Weather was perfect all over the world because they have to look at all the other sites, too, where it could land.
I saw some sun today, by the way, right here in the skies over Jacksonville. First time I've seen it in a week.
You know, we did see some peaks of sunshine today, and it really felt like the first spring day that we've truly had in a long time. Temperatures made it into the 70s, and, well, even though we did see some clouds, it's nice to know that Mother Nature has an idea that it should be spring. Let's check out our current conditions. Right now from the National Weather Service, we're looking at cloudy skies. Oh, some breaks in the clouds here and there. Temperature 69 degrees, humidity at 70%. Barometers holding steady with southeasterly winds at 13 miles an hour. It's the first time in 5 days we've been able to say southeasterly instead of north or northeasterly. 53 our low this morning, made it up to 73 for a high this afternoon. And a look at radar from the past couple of hours shows some scattered sprinkles moving through the first coast and some bigger thunderstorms building to the west of us. Looks like these will be with us probably later on tonight and maybe even tomorrow. Well, the forecast for tonight is calling for mostly cloudy skies, scattered sprinkles, I think would be the best way to put it. 56 to 63 for the low temperatures with a sunrise at 6:27. Let's check the satellite picture, see what's happening across the United States. A large area of cloudiness building across the southern plains and through the mid-Mississippi Valley. This is all, as you can see, moving towards the first coast. It's getting a little better organized right now, and it looks like while tomorrow, the bulk of tomorrow will be a pretty nice day, we will see this system begin to approach us from the west beginning by late afternoon. We'll see some clouds push across the area, then some showers and thunderstorms developing probably in the late afternoon hours. Still going to be a warm day, though. In fact, Forecast Pacific's calling for variable clouds. In other words, some clouds, some peaks of sunshine, and then thunder showers developing with highs 73 to 79 degrees. Sunset will be at 6:40. On the waters, it'll be a southeasterly breeze at 15 knots, 3 to 5 foot seas with a moderate chop on the inland waterways. High tide at 8:20 this evening, low tide at 2:17. Surf temperature still holding and just about to climb up into the 60-degree range. Extended outlook, 75 tomorrow with showers and thunderstorms developing. Rain and thunderstorms on Wednesday. Could see some locally heavy rainfall totals, maybe an inch or better throughout parts of the city. High will be 77. 71 on Thursday once a minor cold front slides through. Then for Friday, it looks like the showers will move out of the area. Saturday actually looks good, and I could be conservative in that 75-degree high. Could be up in the 80s. We'll just have to wait and see. Let's recap the forecast tonight. Mostly cloudy, a few scattered sprinkles, 58. Thunder showers developing tomorrow and a high of 75.
Did you find yourself going through the trash can to see if your lottery ticket, maybe you misguessed those numbers?
No, I had them all there in front of me, and darn it, missed by that much.
I threw them away, grabbed them back. Maybe I didn't see right. How about you?
Well, I'm sorry. I figured I'm not going to win anyway, so I didn't pay any attention to it.
There you go.
Now, you watch.
Okay.
One day I'm going to.
There you
Speaking of lottery, if you want to know what it feels like to win one, well, you can just ask old James Russell. He was among millions who bought lottery tickets, hoping to get at least a share of that $86 million pot over the weekend. Russell lives in Pennsylvania. He's out of work, disabled with emphysema, and he learned his $2 ticket was a winner while he watched TV.
My God, I got it. So I said, nah. So it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I said, well, I'm not getting my family up. And I start riding my car. I said, I'll run into somebody. I figure if I run into a drunk, I'll say, hey, buddy, look what I did. He's going to say, who cares, you know? But I wanted to talk to them. Nobody to talk to.
He just wants somebody to talk to. Couldn't find anybody at 4 in the morning. Well, he's going to have plenty of folks to talk to now. Russell, who held one of those 3 winning tickets, picks up about $28.6 million.
Oh, so he's the guy who won in Jacksonville because a syndicate bought it for him here in Jacksonville.
Miami, Tampa, and yes, Jacksonville, 3 winning tickets. Isn't that something?
Next time.
Yeah.
Well, coming up, Ken will talk with a man who negotiated to keep the Florida-Georgia game right here.
And that's college. Meantime, the pros are back in town. We'll tell you just who, and Ken is coming up also to kick off TPC week.
Tonight's weather report is brought to you by your local Southern Ford dealers.
Well, we came out well in the Florida-Georgia game negotiations, and we're going to talk with the man who did a lot of it.
Major story. A lot of people been holding their collective breath for a long time.
Very big. This is our second bowl game. We're very concerned about this. As we told you at the top of the show, a decision has finally come down on the annual Florida-Georgia game. It will, in fact, be played in Athens in 1995. And joining me live in our newsroom is Mayor Ed Austin's chief negotiator throughout this process, Dan Connell. Dan, good news?
Oh, this was great news for Jacksonville today. It was a real win-win-win for the universities and the cities. Allows us to continue a 60-year tradition that's meant an awful lot to the people of Jacksonville.
Dan, clear us up. Why did the game itself have to be moved? Both sides agreed on the particulars. Why move the game in the first place?
Well, when you're dealing with an issue as big as this event is, every side has to make compromise and make concessions to the other sides in order to get a long-term contract that's this. Jacksonville was able to get the long-term contract because we were willing to give up the game for 1 year.
Speaking of the contracts, are they all signed, sealed, and delivered?
Well, it's come to us as a proposal, which is, as Mayor Austin has said earlier today, that he takes it as a contract offer, and he said it's accepted. There are certain issues that we need to work out, but those are a matter of refining them into legal terms. In concept, we've agreed to everything.
Obviously, one of the issues, stadium renovation, will that go through?
Definitely. This really is the issue that gets it over the hill, over the hurdle, and allows us to move forward with the stadium renovation, this long-term contract.
Dan, one more thing. Tell me about the role of the University of Florida. They gave up a home game to play in Athens. What role did they play in this?
Well, the University of Florida very much wanted the game to continue in Jacksonville and was willing to give up and make the sacrifice to go to Athens 1 year and play the game in order to help Jacksonville get the long-term contract that'll take us to the year 2002. It was a major concession on the University of Florida's part, and we all appreciate that.
Dan, thank you very much. The mayor's chief negotiator throughout this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ken.
It's officially here, TPC week. Today was the first day of practice for the tournament, which begins on Thursday with round one. Many of the 144 pros in the tournament began arriving today and to work on their game. Among the big hitter, John Daly, who was working on his sand shots this afternoon. One pro who has played very well coming into the tournament is Jacksonville's own Mark McCumber, who finished sixth in yesterday's Nestle.
Each week is a different case, but I'm coming in here with a lot of confidence. I'm playing really well, yeah.
What would it mean to you to win this baby again?
It'd be special. I mean, it couldn't be as exciting as the first time, but it might even be more satisfying.
It didn't take long for the golfers to hit their favorite fishing hole. Fuzzy Zeller cast his lure around a 6-foot alligator, and it wasn't long before he had a bite.
Oh. What's Jimmy Houston do? What's Jimmy Houston do after he catches one? Yeah, this is not the one. How much is the weight? This one? Oh, I don't know, about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, maybe? Not very big. That's not the one I'm after. I had a big one roll at me a while ago. Get back in there and tell your mother I'm up here.
Fuzzy Zeller. University Christian has named longtime assistant football coach John Street as the new head coach, replacing Robbie Pruitt. Pruitt resigned Friday to take the job at Union County. Street has been the defensive coordinator and assistant head coach at University for 5.5 years. XXX marks the spot for the city of Phoenix. The Arizona Capitol was awarded Super Bowl 30. That's 30 to all you non-Romans at the NFL owners' meetings today. Super Bowl 30 will be played in 1996. Phoenix also got a big-name free agent to play football for the home team. The Cardinals signed wide receiver Gary Clark to a contract that will pay him $6 million over 3 years. The 31-year-old Clark had spent 7 seasons with the Washington Redskins and was the leading Redskins receiver last season. And the Chicago Bears have signed Jim Harbaugh, their quarterback, back to the team. Yep.
All right, in Georgia, Florida, everything's fine, cool.
Except for 1995, everything's fine.
Well, like I said, you got one.
Right.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Okay.
Thank you. When we come back, our neighbors in Palatka, from Palatka, Russia. Terry has a special report. Coming up later tonight on 17 First Coast News at 11, more First Coast teachers are ending up victims of violent attacks at the hands of students.
And we'll have more for you on those plans to move the Florida-Georgia game out of Jacksonville at least once in the next few years, and we'll have those stories and a whole lot more tonight at 11 o'clock. Meantime, we've got a story that ran into just the other day.
International turmoil is touching lives in Palatka tonight, and you went to see what was going on there.
That's right. First Coast News photographer Robert C. Jackson and I heard about some strangers in Palatka who are also from Palatka. Now, if that sounds a little confusing, remember, there's a good chance there's probably more than one Palatka.
This river flows north.
Wally Stembler and his group are from Palatka. Like the St. Johns River, there's a lot beneath the surface here.
We also catch shrimp here, nets. You know shrimp? Prawns, shrimp.
Wally is from Palatka, Florida. The others are from Palatka, Russia, an international exchange that came about by accident.
By happenstance. I was looking through National Geographic.
Wally spied Palatka on a map of Siberia, got an address from the State Department.
I wrote a letter to that address, and it all began.
The Floridians went to Russia, then pooled donations to return the favor. The Russians arrived a week ago.
Go Gators!
Go Gators!
They went to Gainesville. Palatka, though, is home base until next week. By the time this group leaves, they are going to know probably everything there is to know about Palatka. Palatka, Florida, that is. Ironically, it's when they get home that they face the uncertainties. Uncertainties and anxieties they can't escape. A fierce Kremlin struggle over Russian leader Boris Yeltsin's democratic and economic reforms.
We have no hope in tomorrow's day.
Larissa Sviatenko is a teacher. She spoke for the group and translated.
We don't know what tomorrow will bring us.
Pictures in this book don't reflect the turmoil in their Palatka, their Russia, but it's there. And there's an urgency about going home now that overrides all the uncertainties and fears about tomorrow.
Russians are always, as American people too, patriots of their country. They love their country. Of course, we have many troubles, but still we must live and work and build up our children.
Very passionate. Live and work and build up their children. They must go home.
Have to go home and change things.
And they believe that Boris Yeltsin will bring that better change, that better tomorrow for them. But they're like this.
We will see very soon. That's all the news in 30 minutes.
Peter Jennings coming up next, and we will see you tonight at 11. I'm Terry Casey for Christy and Ken and, of course, Brad. See you
Good night.